We're sure many of you have felt isolated before. Maybe you've spent too much time in your room, feeling bored, miserable, yet surrounded by gadgets, food in the fridge, pizza delivery on call, and with a wonderful, comfortable bed to retire to when needed. So imagine being stuck in a small cell, without much else than a hard bed, a desk, and perhaps a few books to read. Imagine that for a few days, weeks, and then try to get your head around a year, 10 years. Not surprisingly, many human rights advocates call this torture, and there's a lot of evidence that tells us how such confinement can have very negative effects on a person's mental and physical health. As for 46 years in solitary, let's see how that went. If you research most time spent in solitary, you get quite a few names popping up. The Guardian reported in 2016 that a man called Albert Woodfox had been released from a US prison, writing that he spent an incredible 43 years in solitary. The man who ate a fellow prisoner's brain with a spoon, Hannibal the Cannibal aka Robert Maudsley, has almost done that much time in a lone cell in the UK. He even had a special cage made for him, given what he did when he last got close to another prisoner. Then we've got the criminal who's sometimes called America's most dangerous prisoner, Thomas Silverstein, who's been in solitary since 1983. But today, we're going to talk about a man called Hugo Pinel. While his name doesn't appear on many of those lists regarding most time spent in solitary confinement, we can find sources that do indeed say he either spent 45 or 46 years locked up alone. What's perhaps most shocking about this story is what happened to him just a short time after he got out of solitary. But let's first tell you a bit about him. Born in 1945 in Nicaragua, Pinel didn't exactly flourish when he arrived age 13 in the United States. He had fire in his blood, that's for sure, but some sources claim it was his relationship with the Black Panther Party in the 1960s that might have had something to do with his rape conviction. We cannot find much evidence supporting any kind of setup, though. Pinel was sentenced to life to be served at San Quentin Prison. Sources tell us that the 19-year-old Pinel had denied any crime, but in the end took a plea because he was told he'd only get a very short sentence. 3 years later, after attacking a prison guard, he was moved to Folsom State Prison. There he carried out another assault on a guard and was moved yet again. And then at his new place, he assaulted another guard. The year was 1970. A year later, and this troublesome prisoner took his violence one step further. After managing to get a guard into his cell, he committed murder. That same year, and Pinel was moved back to San Quentin. And it's there that he would become part of what's known as the San Quentin Six. Pinel and 5 others had tried to escape, but during this attempt, all hell broke loose in the prison, and there was a massive riot like San Quentin had never seen. During this riot, 3 corrections officers were killed, as well as 3 inmates. One of those inmates was quite well known. He was George Jackson, one of the leaders of the Black Guerrilla family. It was said it was the killing of this man that led to the vengeance taken out on the guards and the other prisoners. It depends on which source you're reading, but you might hear that Pinel and company were trying to expose brutality and racism inside prisons, and this animus led to a riot, or that they willingly started a riot and the prison was totally blameless. This event is still a matter of controversy, and the riot is a story in itself. To say Pinel was disliked by some opposing gangs and by prison guards and other authorities might be an understatement, and he was about to be made an example of. But before that happened, he did some other terrible things, and one of those was when he stabbed his defense attorney, a woman called Lynn Carmen. She actually denied that Pinel had done this, so the story sounds kinda sketchy. Many people state that there was some prison corruption, but we can't corroborate that. Pinel was put on trial anyway. 2 guards came forward and said Pinel had cut their throats during that riot. In 1976, he was convicted of 2 counts of felony assault, and his days of hanging around with other prisoners were over. There was no way the system wanted this man in the general population, and as you can imagine, the guards weren't exactly sympathetic about locking him up alone in the cell for a long time. He moved from prison to prison, we're told, but he was always destined for the hole wherever he went. Much of his time, it said, was spent at Pelican Bay Prison, and his attorney later said that from his first day in solitary to his rather unfortunate release, he had no write-ups and spent his time mostly writing. Much of this work was related to activism. You see, many people believe Pinnell was as much an activist as he was a man that cut the throats of prison guards. We can find sources, as we said, that believe he was set up for his first crime because of his affiliation with the Black Panther Party. Some of those sources state that Pinnell was railing against terrible prison conditions, and this is what got him into so much trouble. This is what one website that writes about poor conditions in prison said about Pinnell. Pinnell was held in solitary confinement for more than 40 years, but he would not be broken. Despite being locked in a tiny cell for 23 hours a day, Pinnell continued to struggle against the horrors of America's prisons. This is what Pinnell wrote himself after many years in solitary. "I came in a juvenile delinquent, a common criminal. Thanks to beautiful people, I awakened. I have grown and transformed into a humble freedom servant. Your care and solidarity has provided me with extra strength and drive to keep on pushing and evolving, and I hope that my company has served you well." Unfortunately, we cannot tell you if this man was treated unfairly by the justice system, or if he was a brute more than he was an activist. What we can tell you is that after those 45 or 46 years in solitary, Pinnell got word from the prison that he was going to be moved to New Folsom, but this time he would be entered into the general population. According to the website Global Research, Pinnell, nicknamed Yogi Bear, was worried about this because he believed that many people would be out to get him. We must remember that his black activism wasn't exactly popular with some gangs who call themselves white supremacists. It also seems he had enemies in black gangs. He was right to be concerned about his newfound freedom. Again, there are two sides to this story, but the one thing all sources do agree on is that after spending so many years in solitary confinement, this man wasn't going to get to enjoy his freedom. That's because in 2015, Pinnell was murdered. Those who write that Pinnell was an activist that had faced a life of injustice wrote that this had been a setup by prison authorities, that Pinnell was basically assassinated, and the prison just let it happen. Some mainstream media, however, reported that Pinnell was merely a casualty in a riot that broke out due to gangs not getting along. We're told that two prisoners who were likely part of a white supremacist gang did the deed, with one man holding the 71-year-old Pinnell down while the other stabbed him 19 times with a prison-manufactured weapon, aka a shiv. Pinnell's lawyer said that Pinnell was a marked man, telling the LA Times the only mystery is why after all these attacks and threats against him, they would send him out to be killed. We're told that his freedom lasted 2 weeks and that he was attacked on the prison yard. His lawyer certainly doesn't think that Pinnell was the beast he was made out to be, and that he was always just on the wrong side of the prison authorities. The story that has come out so far is about the monster that was put down, the lawyer said. "I've never known him to be that." In fact, a federal lawsuit soon accused prison authorities of negligence, as it said they knew exactly what would happen and his death could have been prevented. The Orange County Register tells us that many people were after Pinnell, who had once had a homemade bomb thrown into his cell, and on another occasion had been stabbed in the back during a rare occurrence when another prisoner could get close to him. The lawsuit even goes as far to say that prison guards had bets on how long Pinnell would last when he got out of solitary. Other sources also tell us that guards were overjoyed when he was killed. It was a matter of payback for them. It further states that it was well known that the Aryan Brotherhood wanted Pinnell's blood, and that his two killers both had an extensive history of racially motivated attacks on other inmates. This report tells us that Pinnell wasn't killed during a riot, as had been reported by some media, but that he was assassinated, and it was this hit that caused a riot to break out. We actually found a blog with some correspondence posted by an inmate who claimed to be one of the last ones to see our beloved brother Yogi alive. He also wrote, "There is so much that the brothers and sisters don't know. However, make no mistake that this was a plot, a setup between the administration and staff, also the Aryan Brotherhood, that carried out this racist assassination on Yogi." We also found on other blogs with notes from prisoners, and they too believed this was an assassination of an activist. We should at least listen to a former prison guard that worked in the same prison as Pinnell back in the day. He wrote, "Pinnell in his prime, when I worked with him, was very muscular and did not come out of his cell without many chains and a choke chain installed, which is no longer allowed. He was a very dangerous person. He would bust the knuckles of his fists to be better able to use them as weapons." So there you go. This is a very controversial story. Pinnell might or might not be the prisoner that has spent the most time in solitary, but he might well be the prisoner to spend the least amount of time in the general population after getting out of solitary. Do you know anything about this tale? Do you think he was a monster or just a man fighting back against brutality? Or something in between? Tell us in the comments. Also, be sure to check out our other show, Why Do People Go Crazy in Solitary Confinement? Thanks for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. See you next time.